Coming to you from UBN Studios in Burbank, California. You're listening to the Unsugarcoated Podcast with your host, Aalia.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are. This is Aalia, your host. And I'm going to start it off with this. The strongest of us refuse to perish. It's a line I put in my first novel, Tough Love, and it's a saying I stand by on a daily basis. The very first company I owned and operated, one where I hired employees, happened when I was 25 years old. I started that company from my living room after pulling out a phone book, making a list of potential clients, and I sent out 300 letters to offices promoting my business's services in the Bay Area. Within 30 days, I had not only signed up 3 businesses, but then within the next year, I signed on 30 more businesses. Soon after I sold that business for a profit, moved on to the next business venture. The reason why that is even just remotely incredible, guys, is because you have to remember that I was homeless at 14 years old. And at that time, I had been abandoned by both of my very divorced parents. And I was literally staying in Kaiser ICU waiting rooms in Vallejo just to avoid being on the street. I remember grabbing or stealing a pack of No-Dos from a local convenience store to try and kill myself. And all I can say is I'm so glad it didn't work. Thank God. But it was tough times. And though I still had several years of difficulty and bumps, I eventually found my footing in my early 20s. And at least I found it. That's what I tell people. Creating opportunity where there is none is something I definitely had to learn since those days. That's how this and that 14-year-old girl survived. Did you ever watch MacGyver? Remember how that guy could get out of any place with like a toothpick and some grease? Well, that's kind of what I decided to do with my life. But before I was sending out letters from my living room, I was also an A&R executive for an independent label in San Francisco. And it was during that time that I was introduced to a young man. He was handsome, smart, and on the hustle. And I knew then that he was going to do incredible things. Like him, we shared a resilient spirit, a hunger for entrepreneurship, and basically owning our own lives and our careers. And over the years, we've both gone on to do many things. I'm so happy to have brought him back. And I'm always intrigued when I get to meet and know people who are so strong that they also refuse to perish. Like the late Nipsey Hussle said, hustle and motivate. Here to represent that and share his experience, thoughts, and share a conversation about how he is pivoting business in the music world, not just for himself, but for others, we're going to bring some goodness and inspiration to you today. Let's go. Javier Laval is the ultimate creative director and entrepreneur. If you have attended one of his infamous JL events in Hollywood, entertaining top celebrities, athletes, and trendsetters, then you will quickly realize that he is connected to the key influencers in music, fashion, sports, and entertainment. Through his many business ventures, Javier has collaborated with companies and artists such as Nike, Boost, Pony, Kanye West, Jay-Z, Kim K, Usher, and many more. Javier has also launched one of the first men's luxury footwear brands called Homme in 2008. At the helm of that company, it sold over $120 million in men's luxury footwear, which was acquired later by a larger conglomerate in 2018. Javier is also the co-founder of Believe in Yourself Records, which is partnered with the Blueprint Group and Warner Brothers Music. His ambitious nature caused him to see an opportunity to help artists and creators during COVID-19 and has launched a livestream monetization platform that empowers creators financially. It's called FUTURESTREAM. Here to discuss the hustle in entertainment, fashion, and live events, which is sold separately, by the way, guys. Please welcome Javier Laval. We got to give you applause. Javier, thank you for joining me today. Just to give our audience, you're joining us remotely from...
Joining remotely from the Bay Area. I'm actually at my parents' house. I'm happy to be here. And, let me just give you a hand of applause for that intro. It was flawless. You're flawless. You've always been amazing. So thank you for creating Unsugarcoated and giving me an opportunity to come on here and just share with you. It's been a while.
It has. And actually, I got to say, so we met in the late 1990s, by the way. We got to we go back. Mm-hmm. And when we first met, it was really interesting. I just have to tell you, and thank you for that, because I remember watching you in entertainment, and I was young, scrappy, and hungry for sure. But you had a lot more together, and you were out there, and I love it because I think when it speaks to that time period of entrepreneurship, it was a very different. It was very different than now, right?
For sure.
Like you were out there putting flyers up on poles and stuff. We didn't have
That's
social media,
right.
so going back to that time, let's talk about you started off doing what first and then eventually moving into fashion.
Yeah, well, I mean, back then, this was like the late 90s. I was playing basketball at Skyline, and I was a starting point guard. My career was all athletics, and I was just kind of like athlete focused. Unfortunately, I broke my wrist in literally the first game of the season, and I lost the ability to play. I'm not that tall, but I was really fast and I had great handles. And when you break your wrist as a point guard, you're just done, right?
Right.
So what I started to do was just kind of throw events post game. I wanted to be a part of the team. I could no longer play on the team, but I wanted to celebrate, and we had a winning season. So I would go out and like rent hotel rooms, like 3 rooms in a row, and just for the team and anyone that I could invite that would show up. And what ended up happening is we would end up getting kicked out of the hotel by like midnight, before the party even really got started. There'd be so many people there, and people would be there to like have a good time. And that's kind of my first, little whiff of event production and promoting. And I had a friend who had just a really cool spot, a bar in San Francisco that his dad owned, and he asked me if I wanted to do a party there and throw my after parties there for the team. And that's where it really took off, because now I had an actual venue, and I was throwing huge parties there. I mean, the place fit maybe 200 people, but I'd have like 800 people outside, inside, everywhere. It was chaos. That kind of got the eyes and ears of local promoters, local DJs, local radio stations, and they started to ask me to help them promote new artists. And some of those new artists at the time was like Jay-Z, and like the Fugees, and Nas, and just iconic groups now. I mean, Notorious B.I.G. I was promoting for all these guys in the street. And you're right, putting flyers on cars, doing posters on the wall, doing jumping fences, whatever I needed to do to get the word out. And on top of that, just providing a platform for them to come to town and perform for, like, what we would call tastemakers at the time. Now they're called influencers, but tastemakers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these were, this is pre Facebook, pre social media, just absolutely pre all of that. So the people that were there, you had to know, you had to have a relationship with them. The artists, you had to have a relationship. So that's kind of where I got started.
Yeah, because it's funny when you say that. And by the way, I have to laugh. I have to say this. I have memories of us in studio at 3:00 in the morning, because you always mixed a little bit of everything. I remember going to one of your parties and you had a fashion show going on. We had the hip hop, and me in what I was doing with music. It's interesting because I think that's what you're talking about. Whenever artists would come to the Bay Area, I originally started out in hip hop, and then I moved over to like dance, which is why I think not a lot of our stuff crossed at that time, but I mean, as far as work wise. But when they came to town, they would do promotional tours. So you did the clubs, you did the performance, you did the meet and greet, you did the warehouse meet and greets, because that was all about how you connected your artist to a fan base, and that's how you grew. So I know exactly what you're talking about, and you always did such a great job of just all these different layers to it. And I'm not surprised. I remember, because we kind of like went our different ways. I know now you live in LA, but I know I was still up in the Bay Area, and then I came down here several years ago. We reconnected on Facebook, and I was like, you had launched by then the shoes. And your shoes, we have a couple images for those. You have, it's very unique. I love it because it's super. You attract a lot of artists with your styles, those styles that you created. And you have a quote in one of an interview that I went out and I had to stalk you on. I of course enjoyed it. I'm like, how much info can I get on my board? with this picture that's actually up right now, developing shoes in the right shape is kind of like developing your own character and integrity. There are many shapes and fits, just like there are many paths and directions we can go in life. Careful attention and insights in both areas have made me who I am today. So you went from that cat in the Bay Area promoting and doing things and doing, to then going overseas to Europe and like picking out. Tell me what this journey was like and how you ended up falling into that, as an entrepreneur. Because you could have just stayed with one thing and you never have. I know that about you. You've never been afraid to take on a separate challenge.
Yeah, I mean, much to either my benefit or a fault, I have a short attention span. I've always been kind of like this multi, talented or just curious kid. I still think I'm a kid at heart. And like, I just love to explore new opportunities, new possibilities. And so I came, so while working in the Bay, I thought like, all right, cool. I had hit a glass ceiling here in the Bay. I was doing a lot of big events and things of that nature. But, I knew that, if you could make it in New York or LA, you could make it anywhere. And so I was recruited to come out to LA to work for Babyface and his new company with his wife, and, was working as the director of marketing over there, working on a bunch of projects, and ultimately left that company to just go back to entrepreneurship, starting my own thing. And that led to, again, throwing more events in LA and, launching nightclubs like Greystone and, Guys and Dolls and all these kind of really, popular nightlife destinations in Hollywood. But what I noticed was like, fashion and nightlife and hip hop were brother and sister. This was like a really like close symbiotic relationship. And I've always loved fashion. I've always been a sneakerhead, and I've always kind of like, especially in nightlife, you gotta get the freshest new fit. You gotta like, you gotta be ready to go out. So
right.
I saw that there was a huge void in the market for like a luxury men's sneaker. Essentially, there was a time when there was a dress code. I remember where, you couldn't get in unless you had like something equivalent to like your best church shoes on. You know what I mean? And
I do remember that.
that was never really my style, the slacks. And I realized that was just another way to discriminate against people, just kind of if you had like some sort of baggy clothes or whatever, they could say, hey, you don't fit the dress code, you can't come in. And I didn't like that. And I was like, you know what, there's a lot of really cool people that just wear sneakers and a t-shirt, and they're not here to cause a problem. And you can't really discriminate based on their appearance per se, So I had a big network of friends in streetwear and fashion and skaters. And I was like, these guys are worth millions of dollars, but they don't wear, square toe leather shoes. They don't wear those. They wear sneakers. And so these guys weren't obviously there to start problems. They were there to spend money. They were young. We were all young and making good money. And so I started to curate an environment in Hollywood where skaters, streetwear brands and, fashion brands, everyone would just kind of congregate, and that became JL Nights. And so out of that came the idea to create a product for this community, for what's now like this huge sneaker community, and everyone's going crazy over it. But this was like 10, 11 years ago. And before Alibaba, before any of these platforms, which you could easily just go and do a quick search and figure out a place to make shoes. So I came up with the idea. I flew to China. That was my first destination. It was crazy, because I didn't have any relationships there. I didn't, there wasn't like I could, search anything. It was a different time, and so, but being resilient and being ambitious, I got through it and put my money up, and, I self-financed it and built a business, put some money down for samples, got it shipped to my place in LA, and embarked on that journey. So I was doing it simultaneously, where I was doing events and, launching this footwear brand. And that's kind of how I got it in the hands of all the different celebs and all that stuff.
Yeah, you did a good job, and it's funny when when you talk about that. I love that you said self-financed. I've also when I was talking about the intro, that's why I said that. Like we had to. I know I was the type of person I had to create an opportunity where there was none. So I held an event called EmpowerCon at Los Angeles Convention Center last year, and it was just funny because I'm the type of person who's like, okay, well if I'm not, I don't really need someone to tell me that I'm going to do this. I'm just going to go do it. It isn't a key part of an entrepreneurship is understanding two things. You have to spend money to make money, but you also have to understand it's really easy to spend money, not so easy to make it. Right?
That's true. That's a fact. I mean, but I think, if you're a true entrepreneur, not taking anything away from anybody who does it differently, but you're going to bet on yourself and you're going to just say, you know what, I'm going to double down on the doubters, on the haters, even my own self-doubt. I think as an entrepreneur, people think, oh, like you're just so confident. And it's like, no, man, this is scary. The whole journey is scary. But the difference between us and others is that we just do it anyway.
Right.
And so that's kind of how I've lived my whole life, is like being nervous, going into new places and spaces, new countries, new languages, new products, not knowing anything. I mean, I'm self-educated. I didn't graduate from Stanford or any of this stuff. So like, I think the only thing that separates us again is just our ability to double down on our belief that it's possible.
Right. I mean, you said it perfectly. Oh my goodness. And because of that, you've seen a lot of people also do it around yourself. You actually, so music has been huge. And as you mentioned, you actually were with B.I.G. the day before he was killed. Like, how was that for you? Just, I mean, like to step away from like the conversation of entrepreneurship, but just kind of telling your story. Do things like that influence you to work harder? Or, what was that like for you in general?
Yeah, we had coordinated a listening party for B.I.G. here in the Bay Area. It was at Camiel, and it was maybe 20 people in the room, and it was DJs and program directors and a few promoters, and he was the coolest guy, and like, there was just this air of like amazing, talent, and just kind of like, wow, we're in the presence of a great, right? The B.I.G. And it was the middle of the West Coast, East Coast beef. And I think for the most intensive purposes, he was treated really well here in the Bay Area. And it was a closed event. So it wasn't like it was open to the public or anything. And so we all got to spend some time with him and talk to him and talk to, everyone there. And 2 days later, he makes his way to LA, and on that third day there, he went to that event. I think it was the Vibe event, which I was invited to. I was going to go. I didn't end up going. And he was murdered right there in the street, and it was definitely like a sombering moment, a feeling of real disappointment and sadness to know that like one of our heroes was just gunned down for, I don't know the details behind it, but I would think it's no big deal, it's just a difference, differences in opinion. And so, yeah, it was a tough moment for sure.
Was it interesting? Because, you're talking about an environment. When we talk about entertainment, there can be that violence. I was actually, yesterday I just read that Run DMC, or they just finally arrested two people,
Jam Master Jay
filed charges for exactly, but it's taken 18 years to have that justice. And when you're around all these lights, and they have so much energy, and they have so much promise, and they have so much that they still are planning to give us, and then you see it snuffed out. I mean, has that encouraged you to really focus on bringing a lot more positivity within the entertainment world? Because, as we move into this next step with what you're doing with music, which is huge, how does that make you on the like legacy aspect?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, personally, I went through, so one of the things that we don't really talk about in entrepreneurship or business is kind of like health, right? And health is mental health, and especially in the community, in the Black community or people of color, we're just kind of like these. We got to just stay strong. We got to grind it out, and get rich or die trying. There's all these kind of kind of like, crazy, you know, I don't even know what those are, but just they're credos or mottos that we live by. And I ended up getting really sick. And part of that, was just kind of understanding energy and understanding vibration and understanding, what I take in. And so a lot of these guys may not really understand how powerful they are when they're talking about violence or violence against women or themselves or each other. And so I had to kind of tune that out for a minute, in order to heal myself.
Mm-hmm.
And now back in this new iteration, I'm working with a new artist. His name is David Sebastian, really positive kid. I mean, his lead single is called The Light, and he's talking about how we are all manifesting our own reality and be the light, and kind of just really kind of giving inspiring kids, or not kids, I mean adults, to believe in themselves. I mean, and we built this company together. It's called Believe in Yourself Records. And really the whole premise of it is like, readjust your energy, readjust kind of how you see life, and your outcomes will be different, And so with this new platform, that was something that I wanted to do was give artists an opportunity to readjust how they see their worth. They've been getting abused by the system for so long, whether it's record labels or venues or promoter. I mean, like they're the last ones to eat and they do all the work, so to speak. So I wanted to create something that would level that playing field for them.
It probably feels really good to do something very positive focused in the music industry. And I want you to go into more because FUTURESTREAM, so we have a couple images I know. First of all, you've had some great artists that are coming to, I know you announced it on Facebook, but you had DaBaby and you have other artists. I know I saw you post about Offset, Cardi B, I think, and you just go out there and hustle, man. You go out there, you make these, you're making it happen. And I can understand how, because I do that with the podcast. I'm like, hey, but we have COVID, and just kind of walk me through what birthed FUTURESTREAM in detail and how it works, what the idea is, and how I, as like a listener, can use it, and then also if I'm an artist interested in it, like what does this do, and how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, so COVID hits, right, and we're all, as fans, we're all treated to like this amazing experience because all of our favorite DJs and artists are going live, right, and we're like, wow, this is really cool. And it's great to see. And we saw the success of like D-Nice going live, and Michelle Obama's in his room, and all these really cool people, and Swiss Beats put together the verses, and like some of our favorite artists are battling each other. But my first question was like, how are these guys getting paid, right? This is valuable content. This is valuable. This is valuable. I mean, just the sheer number, right? You're having rooms with 800,000 people in them, or a million, and it turned out they weren't getting paid. The platforms are getting paid. The platforms are monetizing this content. And I was like, this sucks. Yeah, it's great for me as a fan, but I think there's a way for it to work for all parties, right? So there's a way for it to work for the fans. There's a way for it to work for the artists and their expanded teams, right? They got managers. They got families. Like, let's kind of be real. Let's run it down. And then there's a way for it to work for a platform of which I own, right? And that's where FUTURESTREAM was birthed, out of kind of an idea to really help and support artists during this time to monetize their live, right? So what we did was we created a paywall and a live stream technology that allows people creators or artists to set a price to access their live stream, right? So it's the same way you would pay a venue, right? This is essentially the virtual venue, right? You pay an entry to get in, you get to experience the event, you get to potentially buy merch, you get to, to meet people. So that's what we've built, and that's what we're continuing to build, is the virtual venue, and where artists take 90% of the revenue, which is a significant lion's share of the revenue. And typically they'll get 50-50 or 70-30, just never in their real favor. And so I wanted to build something that was more artist centric, And that's kind of what we did is that, essentially that is the platform, that is the technology. It's not just limited to artists. Podcasters can go on, if they have a belief that they can monetize their audience and make a living by charging a small fee to access an event or a podcast, or it could be an educator,
Right.
teaching a master class. We've had yoga instructors go on and teach yoga. This is a platform for creators to monetize their art and own their art, own their data, and monetize it to the maximum capacity.
Wow, that's incredible. I remember seeing a post that you put that one of the users, he was struggling, and then since he's gotten onto your platform, he's made like 20K, you said. And I mean,
Yeah, in a
that's
month.
incredible. Yeah, because like you said, everyone right now, I mean, everyone, we're in media, and well, I have my Unsugarcoated Media as a social enterprise. It's a nonprofit, but it is geared to, it's supposed to make money for itself, and of course, whatnot.
Right.
But the fact is, everybody has to pivot, and you have so many
Sure.
people that are stressed out. And let's go back to that mental mind, body connection. Everything that's happening right now is creating a stress, and not knowing where the money is going to come from to put food on the table, clothes on the back, and a roof over the head.
Right.
Extremely burdensome for everyone right now. And so seeing that you were able to help someone, that's incredible. How does that make you feel as an entrepreneur?
Oh, it feels great. Whenever you can build something or create a product or, environment to help people, and still make money for yourself and build a team and scale that business, then I don't know a better feeling. And so when that DJ emailed me, it was amazing, because that's exactly what I built it for. I was like, look, they're there are big people or big notable guys out there, and women that are in the business, and they may have the money to kind of ride this pandemic out. Let's
Right.
face it, they make millions of dollars. Hopefully they've saved or invested. But what about the guy who, or the band or the girl who does a weekly poetry reading every Sunday and makes a couple $100 there, and that helps pay for food for her baby? And like, these are the people that I think that have been forgotten in this. And we talk about the essential workers, we talk about, and all, it's kind of like, I just wanted to do my part with a community that I'm a part of and that I'm fond of, and I know the value. Think about sitting home during COVID with no entertainment.
Right.
What would that look like? What would that feel like if you couldn't just go on and watch a comedy show or watch this or that, or your favorite DJ or a festival? So entertainers and the entertainment industry, primarily the artists and creators, should be incentivized and paid a fair share. And that's what we built. And the fact is, like, you can go on Instagram and maybe you'll have 1,000 people in your live stream, and that's great. That's social currency. Here you might have 200 people that pay $10, and that's real currency, and those are your super fans. And this is an opportunity for you as a creator to connect with them and really build a bridge and own that relationship, because they're going to support you. And I see it with this DJ, and he's one of many. This is just the one that actually sent me a message. He tracked me down and was like, "Oh, you're the founder. I just want to say thank you. I've been able to pay my mortgage. I've been able to." We were doomed. He's got 2 kids, and he's not a huge DJ. He's just
Right.
a working DJ, or that is no longer working. But as a result of FutureStream, he's working. He's setting up his shows, his events. He's promoting. He's DJing from home, and he's making some good money.
That's huge. That's huge. And you know what? You're right. I know so many people, so many friends that I know that are DJs. You need public spaces to be able to do your thing. I know with film, we've been having issues in the film world. Everything is so crazy. So it's amazing that you were able to bring something that is truly benefiting those out there. And I love that too, because that's why I said, even back then, whenever you can do something that empowers other people. And I know from you, like, even whether it was a magazine, whether it was a CD, anything you ever did, you always had that intent of, like helping people, but then still making money. And I think that's always like the fine line people have a hard time with, for sure. Since we're on the topic of society and culture, I do have to throw in a slight question because I know you're very family orientated. Actually, it's funny. When I met you, we were at an event. I think it was, I can't remember if it was a baptism or something, but it was a family event with your family. I met your mom and your dad were all there. You're very close. Your mom is a very strong woman to you. I know you know, and
Sure.
so just to be current, how does it make you feel knowing that we just had a VP woman nominated, Kamala Harris, which, by the way, Bay Area. I used to actually kind of run into her when I was in City Hall doing my work for my company, and like to see now that she's been nominated for VP. How have you, as a first, you're multicultural, your family is Puerto Rican, but you identify as a Black man. How's this been just for you, looking at it as an observer? How's it made you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think any day and any time that a person of color, Black in particular, or of the mixed, I mean, the diaspora is so vast. I mean, my father's Panamanian, my mother's Puerto Rican. I speak fluent Spanish. It was my first language, but I am, by all intents and purposes, Black. This is kind of how society has siloed everyone and tried to kind of divide everyone into like these categories. So anytime I can see someone of color, whether it be a person from Asian descent or Middle Eastern descent or Black, it feels good, because I think that we are severely and underrepresented in every aspect of our existence, whether it's government, whether it's primarily in positions of power. So if you look at the NBA, or NFL, you say, oh, there's a lot of Black people in there. Well, none of those guys own anything. They don't own the teams. They don't own any equity. They're just players, And so when you can kind of find someone like a Kamala or other entrepreneurs that are now looking at like, hey, I'm going to be a significant shifter of the culture and of policy or of business, then it's always good. It's always good, at least from my perspective.
Right. It's funny when you said her name. I think everyone's always it'll be the same thing with anyone. I go through it with my name. Nobody says my name correctly most of the time. Kamala. It's funny I say Kamala because my son is Kamal. And ironically enough, Kamal is, though we're not Indian, it is an Indian originated name. It's, that Asian. And so when I say it, I think it'll be unique because everyone's always, whenever you're different, right, you just people will stumble over that. But I think regardless of it, I'm with you. I think that it's good. For some reason, at times, there can be this perception that if you're different, you're not as patriotic, you're not as capable, you're not as deserving. I don't know why people assume, depending on your skin color, that somehow dictates how much you love this country, But, I definitely like the idea of showing people the power of everyone within these four corners of a country, and how much, no matter what your background is, you could become anything. I think that for anyone, that's important. You're a father, you have children you're raising. You want to see them have opportunities when they grow up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest kind of misconception, at least in this country, is that it belongs to somebody, and that in itself is the biggest problem. Like, this is a country of immigrants. If it belongs to anyone, it's the natives, right? And we've seen what has happened to the natives at the hands of this kind of like power structure, So anytime a group of people, whether it's Black, Native, Asian, Middle Eastern, I mean, Latino, because we've all been under attack here in this country,
Right.
steps forward and says, hey man, like, this doesn't work for us.
Right.
And we want reparations, we want equality, we want we want a seat at the table. It's looked at as unpatriotic, and that's kind of the biggest misnomer, because true patriotism would acknowledge all of these cultures and the contribution of all of these cultures to what makes the United States of America amazing and great, but as long as this kind of like hierarchy of power stays in place, where you look across like Fortune 500s, and it's primarily white men that are leading these Fortune 500s. You look across all sectors of government, it's primarily white men. You look across the banking infrastructure, the venture capital infrastructure, it's all primarily white men. So, this does not sound like equality and justice. It sounds like a dictatorship led and driven by white men.
Right.
And that's the bottom line. And
Right.
when we're all standing up for it, whether it's women of color, whether it's LGBT, QT, whatever, any other sector, they just get torn down, demonized, and and
Right.
ultimately, they try to dismantle that for good reason, because they're trying to protect their position.
Yeah. As a father of a daughter, and seeing kind of some of the, and this is not meant to be a political, this is more, I always say, it's always humanitarian driven for the most part. You have, let's say she grew up and she ran for VP, and then you saw people from her community like start throwing mud and start, just being ugly. What would you, what do you say to society about being better about that? I mean, how do you think that feels for the parents of any person of color who's trying to do good within our world, and then they're just torn down simply because of their skin color or background?
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's not right. It's not fair. I do think that we individually as humans and as a society forget that we are human. And so we all make mistakes, and we all have done dirt in the past. I mean, I can't, whoever you are, unless you're Mother Teresa or something, you've done some dirt,
Right.
And so, I think that when people step forward publicly, either as celebrities or politicians, we tend to forget that. And we tend to just kind of try to find the dirt and punish them for it. And I think that, as a result of you from it and do anymore, or you got away with it, you feel like, yeah, this is something that I want to continue to do. So I recognize that Kamala may have a history of certain things that the community is not in support of, but ultimately maybe that's something that she learned from, and it's brought her closer to the community from understanding what that was and how to rectify it. And so I just think that we're so judgmental as a society,
Yeah.
that it just hurts everybody in the process.
So going back to entrepreneurship, when you say those things, it reminds me of a lot of the things that you've had to go through, even just as an entrepreneur. Like politicians, you've got to get out there. You have to understand what the need is, right? How, and I know, like that was one of the things that I had to like remind our listening audience and our viewing audience. We make it clear that this hustle is sold separately, because while you can wish and dream for things, action actually has to happen. So if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm out there saying, man, I want to be like you, Javi, I want to get out there and really do something positive, what do you say, especially given the actual things that people have now, the access? What's your like first, piece of advice? What's your go-to to somebody? Because you do a lot of mentorship. I want to hit on that too, because you also don't just promote yourself and your businesses. You actually have taken the time to go out there and help other businesses and entrepreneurs learn how to be sustainable. Let's talk about that a little bit, please.
Yeah, when I sold, I mean, I've always been kind of, I've had people hit me on social media and say, hey, how do I launch a footwear brand, and how do I do this? And I just love it, and I feel like I wish I had somebody to ask questions to back in those days. But anyone that hits me online gets a response, and I do my best to consult them or point them in a direction, or take, more interest in what they're doing, depending on where they're at in their business. Some are just asking questions, and some of them have an actual product, or they have a business and they just need some real direction, or they need resources or some funding, things like that. And I can help in that area as well. But like, I think just helping people is innate to me. I love doing that. And I love seeing other people win. I feel like I won. I mean, even being here with you and seeing what you've set up and what you're doing, it feels good to me. It feels like I remember when you weren't having such a good time in life, and now to see you kind of bounce back from that through the trials and tribulations is exciting to me. Although I didn't have anything to do with that and your success, it does feel good to see other people succeed, whether I'm involved actively or not. And that's just how I am.
Yeah. But you always provided, funny enough, over those years. I think all of those moments that we all had, I mean, even Ghazi and all of us hung out back then, and we were all just young and like you said, scrappy and hungry, young, scrappy and hungry, and we
Right.
wanted more. And it's it's funny because I know when people ask me those questions, it's the first step. What do you want to do? What is your goal? And obviously sustainability of anything is very important. Some people can't figure that out at the beginning. They just have an idea and a dream, right? Like, I don't know how, but I'm just going to make this happen. And you touched on something that's super important too. Building a network, I think, is always one of my biggest, you have to go out there, you have to network. Because of your networking, you opened yourself up to so many opportunities and relationships that, like, for me, I genuinely say that if you really want to be an entrepreneur, then you need to understand the power of networking. Would you agree with that?
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, the old saying, your network is your net worth, right? And
Yeah.
so networking today is a million times easier than in the past. I mean, you literally had to run into somebody
Right.
to connect with them, because there was no DM, there was no commenting on their page 1,000 times to get their attention. It was like, I want to meet somebody, I'm going to call their office, probably get a secretary or an EA, or I'm going to just go out and try to network, try to meet them, try to connect with them. And that, that's changed. So anyone that's looking to be an entrepreneur now, just know that you're working with the cheat code. You guys have so many more resources than we did when we were starting, that you can literally just identify who you want to connect with and message them and message their network. You can hit them on LinkedIn. You can do stuff to get their attention, whereas before you literally had to run into somebody,
Right.
and hope that you can get through, and hope that you can get an intro, hope that they would even remember who you are. So yeah, and I would just say, now as an entrepreneur, just don't just eliminate all the excuses. That's kind of what I'm telling entrepreneurs, because there's a lot of excuses nowadays, whether it's the political climate, oh, Trump's in office, or they're not lending to black, there's all these excuses that I feel just won't get you anywhere.
Right.
I think the fun part of being an entrepreneur is seeing maybe what that reality is, and blowing past it, or blowing through it, and being on the other side of it, saying, man, I remember when they weren't lending any money. I remember when it was a recession and I hustled and made money during the recession, or things like that is what excites me, versus like sitting back and creating more excuses.
Yeah. If you are determined and persistent, I think people would be surprised at what they're capable of. I mean, that's like when we do this podcast, we want to bring value. So people listening, you need, remember. Yeah, and I always tell people, even if you want to win the lotto, you still have to get up off the couch to go buy the ticket. It's not just going to fall through the ceiling, right? So there's always these things that have to be done. What is the daily ritual that keeps you going no matter what obstacle you face? Because you have, you touched on the health one, and I know you're all about biohacking and whatnot. And like, I think that I totally wish we had time to really go into that too, because I know that the health conversation, big deal. But as far as what is the daily ritual that keeps you going no matter what obstacle you face, and how can someone else apply that in their own life towards their journey of being a successful entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, this is a passionate topic for me, especially when I consult entrepreneurs. It's health, right? Because we all want to make money, we all want to be rich, all this good stuff. We want to help people, but in order to do that, you got to be healthy, and that's mind, body, spirit. And so I have learned that without meditation, I just can't function. Like I meditate, anywhere from a half hour to 2 hours a day, and I find time to do that. So I'll wake up early in the morning before the kids get up, or I'll do it in the middle of the day. Like, I got to find time to meditate. The other thing is learning how to breathe. I think what I learned in my health journey is that, as adults, we get anxiety because we're breathing here up in our chest, and like, we're just we forgot how to breathe. And I mean, when you think about what's most critical to our health and our wellness and our survival, it's the breath. It's not water, it's not food, it's not, it's breathing. And so I think, when I started to learn breath work, I realized just how expansive that is, and how much we have yet to learn about how to breathe, breathing into your diaphragm, really getting oxygen to your entire body to energize it and to relieve yourself of stress and anxiety and things of that nature. So it's a few easy things. It's meditation, breathing, and eating right, learning your body and understanding what it is that you need to be well.
Yeah. I mean, I totally get that. I love it when you say that, because one of the things, and I just love breathing. Remember, I had to do a test recently. And I mean, I love yoga for many reasons, not just the practice of it, but I mean, well, actually, the practice of yoga includes all mind, body, and soul. It's not just doing the moves and doing a warrior 1 and warrior 2. It's a lot more in the breath work that goes into that. It's, like you said, it comes from your core. It's so powerful. And when I went to go do a medical test recently, they were just so shocked. They're like, "Oh, you know how to breathe right?" They were so surprised at that. I'm like, well, "Do people know that?"
Yeah, it's an anomaly. If you know how to breathe, you are few and far between. Like most of us, we breathe like this when we're babies, So inherently we know this, and you'll see the baby's belly kind of like, popping out as they breathe. But as we get older, we bring it into the chest. It doesn't allow for it to circulate through the rest of the body, therefore not hitting our what's called our second brain, which is the gut, and this is kind of where we have our feeling. This is where we have what's called our gut feeling and all that other stuff. And so if that's not getting enough oxygen, we have now gut problems, and I mean, it just, the domino effect just starts to happen. So I'll find myself in stressful positions or meetings, and I'll just have to like stop and just take deep breaths and kind of connect with that again and keep it moving, So simple things like that really help.
So just curiosity before we wrap up, what's the biggest lesson you've learned, and what would you do differently if you had to do it over again? Or would you do anything differently for that matter?
That's a great question. It's super loaded, because I got like a million lessons, and I learn new lessons every day. But I think the biggest lesson that I've learned, which is kind of what we just tapped on, is don't replace your health for money or success. Like, you won't enjoy your money, and you truly won't be successful unless you're healthy. And so, if you're starting to feel run down, you're starting to feel stress, or like that, there's no money in the world worth that. And I think we can look at our beloved like leaders like Steve Jobs and other people that would they still be here if they had just taken care of their health instead of trying to build some big massive billion-dollar business, and so I would never, at this point, I would never put any business in front of my health or my family.
I relate to that one big time, because even a lot of people ask me how I do all the things. How are you writing books, Aalia? How are you running a podcast? How are you trying to make movies? Because somehow I do balance it with understanding that when I don't feel well, I have to take a step back. That's even why people will say, why do you do the podcast in seasons and not keep it going? Because if I don't give myself that break, I'm good to nobody,
Right,
So,
that's right.
Yeah, so I mean, I get that, and I love that, and like, it was even interesting because I know so many people are getting anxious with COVID and the restrictions, and why do I need to do this? And it's like, it was funny because my husband said to me the other day, well, people got to live. And I go, well, I understand people got to live, but I want to live, period. Like, so there's this, you know what I mean? Like,
right,
I
of
know
course.
we all want to go out and have fun, but I'd like to like live.
Right.
That's my goal.
I want to feel good. I want to live fully expressed and feel healthy. I mean, it's nothing like just feeling good in the morning. Like, that's That's underrated in our society. You know, most people get up and they need coffee and they're moping and they're upset. And it's like, I don't want to feel like that. And I'm not going to do anything, and nothing is worth me feeling like that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I'm glad because we need you around to keep doing more amazing, amazing things. You know,
Thank you.
I can't wait to actually, when you get back down to LA, we have to do a social distance get together. But I do, you know, I really love all the things that you're doing. I wish you loads of continued massive success. I'm definitely doing the future thing. I want to stream. I want to check it out as a fan. I know you're doing, you know, good things for artists and people. You know, we appreciate
Yeah.
that. Really quickly, for our listening audience, what's the best place to go and find out more information?
They can follow me on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, or LinkedIn, just my name, Javier Laval, Laval. And from there, it'll point out to all the different things I'm doing with Believe in Yourself Records, FUTURESTREAM, David Sebastian, all these other cool projects. So
Cool, cool. Well, I'm
yeah,
so thankful for your time, Javier.
thank you, thank
And
you for having me. Really appreciate you. Really,
thank
really appreciate you.
thank you, my love. I appreciate you too. Audience, thank you so much for sticking with us. I hope you've enjoyed another episode of us being unsugarcoated. We look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, take care. Bye.